Can we switch the speaker to put it on the other side? Otherwise people won't be able to hear you. See, the speaker is pointing that way and people are the other way. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Camera is fine. I will be standing there, so you can stand over there around me.
Okay.
I think I not Steven is you are talking, and Sam. Okay, too. Hi, we didn't met. Condolences. Let's do it. Paul Burrs, please. Okay. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אכסר, מן הוד שירביצני, על ימי מנוחות ינהלני, נפשי ישובב, יענכני במקלי צדק למען שמו, גם כן לכבדי צל מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ידפוני כל ימי חיי, ושאבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The words of the 23rd Psalm, Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit. Guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out. We also welcome everyone watching on the internet. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. My name is Rabah Mas from Congregation Shari Zedek, and it's my great honor to be here officiating the funeral services for Norman Baker, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory. He was also known to the Jewish people by his Hebrew name, Menachem ben Yitzchak Yossel Vechana, Zichrono Livracha. He was the son of Isaac and Anne Baker of blessed memory, beloved husband of Judith for some 70 years. The brother, Sam, Beth, Sonia, Sylvia, and Bill of blessed memory. The father of Pam, Kim and Tom, Zichrono Livracha, and Stephen and Jody. The grandfather of Kinneret, Samuel and Theodore. Norman passed away on Thursday, November 24th, after a short illness, surrounded by the love of his family at the age of 95. In a few minutes, we are going to hear a couple of heartfelt eulogies prepared by Norman's son Stephen and by Norman's grandson Sam. They are going to take us down memory lane to help us understand that even though Norman is no longer with us in the physical world, his legacy will be present in this world for decades to come. Norman lived his life as a proud Jew, but sometimes it's difficult for us to see and to understand to what extent Jewish values are present in the lives of our loved ones. In Norman's case, it goes from his glowing smile, cheering up everyone around him, to his joyful and warm spirit, perhaps following the words of the book of Proverbs. Bright eyes cheer the hearts, and also worry can rob you of happiness, but kind words will cheer you up. But perhaps the most impressive Jewish value present in Norman's life was his commitment to everything he promised. It says in the book of Deuteronomy, and I quote, "You must fulfill what has crossed your lips." The Talmud interprets the words "your lips" as referring to someone who makes a pledge to give tzedakah, and determines that that pledge has a status that is similar to a vow that must be fulfilled. A person who made a promise or pledge to tzedakah and doesn't go through it or fails to fulfill it has violated the Torah prohibition. But many commentaries encourage us to understand this verse not just limited to commitments to tzedakah, but as a general rule to be extremely careful to fulfill our promises, to keep our word, to be truthful and honest in what comes from our lips. Norman was well known in the business world because his promises, his commitments were sacred and they were always kept. But perhaps the most impressive situation where this value was present was when his mother made him promise that he would always take care of his brother Bill. So, as soon as Norman opened his own company, the first thing he did was to hire Uncle Bill to work for him. Which brings to another Jewish value present as the highest level, the value of tzedakah. Most people think that giving tzedakah is to send a check to a charity. And while all that constitutes tzedakah, the best way to fulfill that mitzvah is like Norman, by offering a loan or employment to someone. Norman believed that tzedakah should always be practiced, preserving the dignity of the giver and the receiver. And what he did for his brother, the way he did for his brother, and who knows for how many others. And that was a perfect example of that. So, as I mentioned, we are going to hear now two wonderful and heartfelt eulogies presented by Stephen and Sam. So, who wants to go first? Sam, please.
How do you begin to tell the story of a man in just a few words? While we stand here together today, staying warm, huddling around each other, we can start to tell Norman's story, our Sabah story. A story that will continue to be told through countless shared experiences between our Sabah and his friends and his family, all of whom look up to him. A story that will continue to live on through his wife, Safta, his three children, Pam, Kim, and Stephen, and us, his grandchildren, Kinneret, Theo, and myself, Sam. At its very core, Sabah's story will be told in three parts. For years to come, we will speak about the moments we shared and the memories we have with Sabah. All the times Sabah let us win when playing cards on the family room floor, holding hands on short walks to William Osler Park on a cold and sunny day, almost like today. And the times we sat right next to Sabah on the green sofa with our right hand in his lap and our head leaning on his shoulder. The second part of the story will be told silently to ourselves as part of our internal dialogue. The little things that remind us of Sabah. A comfortable reclining chair sitting on its own in a living room. A cold, small glass of orange juice at breakfast. The oversized dark gray and blue nightgown hanging in our closet that he gave us when we were far too small to wear it without tripping on its length. And the final part of this story is one that will be told through the lives that are lived for generations to come. It starts with Pam, it starts with Kim, it starts with Stephen, his children. It starts with us, his grandchildren. And it starts with you, everyone he loved and everyone who loved him, who were able to join us here today in person and around the world. It's important to note, though, that the final part of this story has no final chapter. The final part of this story has no end. This story is one that will be passed down for generations. I will not speak for others, but I will speak for myself. And as I begin to share my stories of Sabah today and for many days to come, I know I will have tears in my eyes, but I will also have a smile on my face. Because what Sabah and his smile could do without fail was bring endless joy and love and warmth to everyone and anyone around him. So today, we, Sabah's grandchildren, stand before you and humbly ask you to start telling this story, your story of Sabah, and continue to tell this story for as long as you can. Thank you.
received an email a couple days ago, even before I started writing this, and I was thinking, I don't need to write anything. Someone who really knew my mom and dad really, really well from their brief encounters, and it captured so much about what my father is, and a lot of it is in here. I wasn't influenced by that email, but it would have made it much easier, but I'm really glad that I went through this exercise, so bear with me. Where to begin? A story about someone so dear to us. It has a beginning, a middle, but seemingly no end. No matter what is said today, there will always be so much more to add. Let me try. We've seen such an incredible outpouring of love and comfort from so many people from near and far. We really appreciate what you've shared with us and has helped us through these difficult and painful days. To anyone attending here today or listening remotely, we feel your support and we thank you. Let me start by acknowledging that this service was expected to begin at 1:30. That meant Dad was going to be ready before any of us, and he certainly was today. No matter where we had to go over the years, you can bet Dad was the first one ready, either at the door, pacing the hallway, tapping his toe, subtly or not, suggesting it was time to leave. Me, being me, I was usually the one to keep him waiting, whether it was to get to the synagogue for a service, make it to the restaurant for a reservation, or get to the golf club for an early AM tea time. Dad was always ready to go. We tested his patience on those occasions, but we always made it to our destination in time for the event. The smile, the curly hair, the punchline, the love. Oh, the love. Dad was a life-size teddy bear, affectionate, a deliverer of huge hugs. If he ever embraced you, you'd remember it. He was the fabulous Bager boy. Norman Bager was the patriarch of our family. He was Norman, the husband of 70 plus years and a lifelong partner and friend to our mother, Judy, Savta, Dad to my sisters and me. He was Saba to his treasured and devoted loving grandchildren, Kinneret, Samuel, and Theodore. He was also affectionately called Dad by my wife Jody and by my sister Kim's dearly departed husband Tom. Dad's oldest friends called him Buck. He was Mr. Bager even to certain close friends who may have been a bit intimidated by him, and even though they could address my mother by her first name. It was Judy and Mr. Bager. Dad commanded respect. He earned it, though he never asked for it. Dad was OG. Ask the young people in your family about that one. When it came to how a husband should behave, how a father should parent, how someone should look after his siblings. He had exceptional instincts and modeled his behavior after anyone who he himself admired. Anyone might be a teacher of some skill. He knew the difference between right and wrong. He knew when to be serious, and he knew when to kibitz. I can't remember a time where he acted inappropriately or said the wrong thing. If he spoke, you'd want to listen. He was a man of few words, but each had significance. Dad was the baby of his family, the youngest of 6 children. He was born in Winnipeg and lived here his entire life. Save for the week, we moved to Albany, New York. Ask us about that, a story for another time. Our grandparents, Itzhak Yossel and Chona, who emigrated to Canada just over 100 years ago, provided everything they could to all their children. Sam, Beth, Sonia, Sylvia, Bill, and baby Norman. I remember certain events at my grandparents' house, like Shabbat dinner or Pesach Seders. We also played tag or hide and seek in their front yard as kids. The fenced-in space was about as big as a dining room table. How we played anything there is a mystery. Dad's home was a traditional first-generation Canadian home. My Zeta was very religious and a very hard worker outside the house, while my Baba did everything that needed to get done at home. We have cousins spread all over the world, Canada, US, all have their roots at home. Dad always had a close relationship with his siblings, particularly Sam, who was his elder by 18 years. Sam was the most tender of people, and as a big brother helped raise Dad. His sister Beth ended up moving to Texas. His sister Sonia moved to Vancouver, and Sylvia and Bill, who was 2 years Dad's elder, remained here in Winnipeg. We always knew our mother had 2 birthdays. Ask us about that later. But it wasn't until relatively recently that we learned that Dad also had 2 birthdays. Dad always celebrated his birthday on July 15th, based on when his mother, our Rabah, said he was born. When he had to get a government document to prove his date of birth for something, it suggested it was in fact the 28th of July, not July 15th, as we had always acknowledged. As impressive as it might be that Dad had reached 95 years, we might use the mathematical model to prove he was only 10 years shy of his 200th birthday. Dad maintained many of the Jewish traditions he was raised with, while he and my mother raised the family. My sisters celebrated bat mitzvahs, me a bar mitzvah, and we had a family Shabbat dinner most Friday evenings. Dad's connection to his Jewish roots remained strong through the years, and became strengthened over the past decade or so, when my sister Pam took on the Yom Kippur duty of chanting the Haftorah each year at synagogue. Whenever we could be together for high holiday services, sitting beside Dad and Mom in their reserved pew, it felt special, and we always felt united, physically and spiritually. We may have passively jostled over who got to sit beside Dad, as that sibling got to hold Dad's hand during the service. As Dad got older, he got progressively colder. So sitting in shul meant making sure his talit was draped across his shoulders and rubbing his arm or back to create some extra heat from the friction. Dad was kvelling anytime he saw and heard Pam performing her duties on the bima, and that continued through the years. I think he knew that his father, Yitzhak Yossel, would have been so proud that Dad's daughter was keeping that flame alit. My sister Kim introduced Dad and our entire family into some new and unfamiliar to us spiritual directions. Dad, who was always somewhat conservative and a slow adapter to new things and change, grew to appreciate and embrace this whole new channel to God. Kim had a special connection with her spiritual master, Chariji, in India, who was the same age as Dad. Dad grew to have his own unique relationship and connection to Chari. It was a very touching moment in time, and I remember how heartwarming it was to Kim and to Dad to see that new door opened up. Didn't ever mean Dad was turning his back on Judaism in any way, merely created another complementary path to connect to a higher power. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Did you hear the one about the rabbi, the pope, and the... Dad could have everyone, himself included, in stitches, laughing hysterically with the delivery of the punchline to any joke. Like his sister Sonia in Vancouver, his timing was perfect. He could often start laughing before he'd say the final line. Often the jokes had a Yiddish punchline and perhaps didn't translate that well, but we'd find ourselves laughing anyway. He'd simply make it funny. As many will attest to, I inherited some of my dad's traits. Joke telling was not among them. Thanks, Mom. A random memory. During the winter, he would take us for toboggan rides up and down Borbank Street when we were little. The toboggan was being pulled by our dog, Kelev. We wanted to go faster, but Kelev would only run if Dad ran alongside him. If Dad stopped, so did Kelev. Dad maintained an excellent fitness level all those years while we got to enjoy the ride. Dad was a well-rounded athlete. He played tennis, golf, and baseball. He swam, cross-country skied, and cycled. He enjoyed his regular visits to the Rady Center. Began with regular swims, until he found the water was too cold for his liking. Here's a routine, then evolved into walking the track, lifting weights, doing 100 or more sit-ups, some stretching, and finally the best part of all, the sauna and steam. Dad loved the schwitz. From the early days when he and his older brother Sam would go into a room that could bring water to a boil in a few minutes. I remember tolerating it for about 10 seconds as a kid before running out to the comfort and relief of cooler air. He coached my sisters and me in softball in the early years, each of us on separate teams and different age groups. He would remind me that Pam was the one that was the real athletic talent as kids. He coached me in hockey and taught me just about every sport I ever competed in. He was a tough hockey coach, never showing me any favoritism. In fact, he was harder on me than any of my teammates, and I once came home and cried to my mother that Dad had been so hard on me one practice. He motivated me to become a better skater and player, and as a result, taking nothing for granted. Dad loved the Jets, the Bombers, and he loved Tiger Woods. What we didn't know is that Dad developed his own set of superpowers, and he could influence the outcome of a golf tournament in which Tiger competed. Dad thought merely by watching the home stretch of the action on TV in his home in Winnipeg, he might bring bad mojo to Tiger playing at US Open at Pebble Beach or the Masters in Augusta. Amazingly, Tiger won, and Dad's theory was proven to be true. Dad and Mom spent many a winter weekend cross-country skiing on the trails at Assiniboine Park or at LeBarrier Park. Dad was always particular about making sure they chose the right wax for the base of the skis to get the maximum traction and glide. They'd set off for an hour or two, and periodically, Dad would decide on a particular straightaway section of the trail that he'd increase the pace a bit. He'd race for a couple of minutes, almost in a ski sprint mode, expecting to turn around and see Mom way back in the distance. Invariably, Mom was right on Dad's heels. Either he wasn't as fast as he thought, or he always underestimated Mom's skiing proficiency. It was a similar experience on the tennis court. Mom and Dad played regularly at Glendale in the summers, indoors at Unicity in the winter, or on their annual month-long stays in Maui. Dad looked a bit like Jack Kramer with his athletic physique and stylish strokes, and Mom channeled her inner ballerina to daintily and persistently defend her side of the net. Dad would allow Mom to hit into the doubles lanes to even out the odds and expand his court area for her, and it kept them competing in the friendliest and kibitziest manner for years. Dad enjoyed cycling too. He taught all of us how to ride bikes as kids, running alongside. Thanks, Caleb. He and Mom provided us and then all the grandchildren with bikes over the years. Every year, our parents participated in the Riverview Cyclothon. Dad was recognized as the eldest participant for at least a couple years before he retired from that activity. He'd have to be reminded from time to time that it wasn't a race, but rather a pleasure ride. Again, no matter how fast he pedaled, Mom was always right there, keeping the same pace. Mom would continue to enjoy her bike rides for many more years, once Dad parked his bike for the last time. For Mom's 60th birthday, Dad's gift to them was a European bike trip along the canals of Holland. Dad impressed everyone there, from the fellow riders to the guides, with his strength and stamina, and of course his humor and spirit. It was such a memorable trip and experience for both of them, and Mom talks glowingly about it to this very day. Dad loved swimming. He was like a dolphin slicing through the water or the waves, buoyant and strong. We three kids would hang onto his neck and shoulders. He'd swim under and through the water at the city center pool from one end to the other while we held on, his arms pulling the water behind him and his legs fluttering at high speed. He'd be rocking his Speedo swim trunks, looking like Johnny Weissmuller in Tarzan. The same look he was known for each February when he and Mom went to Maui for their winter getaways. Each day there, he and Mom would walk for miles in each direction, Dad achieving optimal bronze tan level by day 2. Dad would always find a Moses-esque walking staff, and like King Kamehameha, he'd walk along the sandy shore of the Kihei beaches with Mom in her fashionable bikini walking beside him, both stopping to pick up the occasional seashell to add to their collection of knickknacks. Over the many years, I'd had the pleasure of golfing with Dad on every summer visit to Winnipeg. He had his regular golf buddies over the decades, like Eddie, Marvin, Bill, and Peter. There were a lot of guys who wanted to play in Norman Vager's group. One of his buddies would always willingly bow out so I could fill the foursome. Dad was a great golfer, lacking only the ability to chip. His handicap hovered around 10. He could putt like Jack, had an on-course charisma like Arnie, the smooth, silky swing like Freddie. If only he could chip, he'd say. One day while playing on the 16th hole at Glendale, Dad walked up to the tee box, no rangefinder or measuring device in hand, hit his set of 7-iron approximately 138.5 yards to an elevated green with a back pin position, and walked toward me as soon as he finished his swing. I think he knew upon contact. Hole in one, number 5 if I'm not mistaken. I was way more excited about it than Dad. Routine, I think he said. Mom and Dad golfed every Friday for many years. He was casual with scoring on those days and would give himself putts from anything within 6 feet, but he usually sunk the putts inside 15 feet anyway. Mom would insist on finishing each hole, even if she had a 2-inch putt left. She would have Dad wait as she wanted to sink the ball in the hole and hear the sound and raise her hand with success. That was the point of the game, right? Mom was there for the walk too. She has always enjoyed the walk. Dad loved the golf and he loved being with Mom. If you were in any business, you'd want to be serviced by Norman Bager. Dad served his customers to the best possible level, always, full stop. He was always on his game when there was an interaction with a customer. He taught me that everyone in an organization deserves respect. The person whom you think has a lower level position may well occupy the decision maker's desk one day, and he or she will remember how you treated them in the past. He never oversold, even if the customer was interested in being more aggressive with their commitments. He always felt it was better for the customer to come back for more than regret buying too much and being stuck with excess stock. Every business owner, every merchandise manager, every buyer looked forward to a call or time spent with Norman. He would help them do their jobs better and would make it easier for them to succeed by representing their interests with his principles at the manufacturer. He was always trying to achieve a win-win for both sides and felt if everything worked out that way, he'd be looked after accordingly. Dad had exceptional and long-term relationships up and down organizations and with companies here in Winnipeg, across Canada, the US, and Asia. He had a particular close connection to his Taiwanese family, the owners of Shin Fu. They would eventually come to depend on Dad for his knowledge and advice in many a Canadian business decision, and would eventually invite him and honor him at their corporate anniversary event in Taipei. I had the privilege of working with my father over some of those years while employed with the Shin Fu Group out east. Closer to home, I remember being in Winnipeg one time when we were invited to the TrueServe headquarters for a meeting. The message came from the top. We expected to talk about some serious stuff that day. While waiting in the boardroom with a few members of the team, the doors eventually opened up and top management came in with a birthday cake, saying to Dad, for what I recall was his 70th or 75th birthday, I'm not sure. It was a quite special moment. We didn't have cell phones at the time to take pictures, and everyone there was so happy to celebrate Dad. By the end of his career, it wouldn't have surprised me if they had erected a statue in Dad's honor. He gave so much of himself to helping others. Dad continued his close relationships with team members at Princess Auto and other customers all the way into his late 80s. No family time went without a feast, whether at home or at any of our family's go-to restaurants in the city. Dad loved his sushi, his borscht, his hot dogs and crispy fries, his pastrami sandwiches with hot mustard, his crunchy pickles. You name it, Dad ate it and enjoyed it. When dining out, forget about paying for the meal. Dad was like the old Western gunslinger, but in his case it was grabbing the bill and pulling out his wallet. Talk about paying it forward. Dad was so generous, even when it wasn't expected or even justified. About 4 years ago, Mom and Dad moved out of their house and into the Shaftesbury. It didn't take long before the place felt like home. Mom always encouraged Dad to keep moving in his later years. To coin one of our family's popular expressions, motion is lotion. Dad used to climb up and down the stairs a few times a day when they lived in the house. But after the move to the Shaftesbury, Dad traded the stairs in for an elevator and began his long-distance training with multiple walks each and every day from their suite at the end of the building to the dining room where they ate lunches and dinners. It was the furthest possible distance between 2 points in the building, and Dad was never crazy about the lengthy walk, but he did it and was probably rewarded for it in a weird way. To no one's surprise, the residents and staff were always happy to see my parents interact with them, provide the services offered to everyone there. Dad's needs grew with time and he became more and more dependent on help, and help came to him with love and tenderness. After a life of giving, it was time for Dad to finally start receiving and taking. We didn't realize that during this time Dad was still giving. The incredible care providers loved Dad to the very end and talked to us about what he gave them, whether from his smile or what they genuinely felt from his heart. Dad's heart was powerful, and the doctor at the hospital on a Wednesday said that his heart was remarkably strong, especially for someone at 95. According to our mom just yesterday, Dad set us a good example of how to live and how to leave. In the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba's Endowment Book of Life, Dad contributed his story submitted many years ago. The last sentence that he wrote was this: all in all, I consider myself to be the luckiest, wealthiest man on earth. My treasures are my wife, our 3 children, and our 3 precious grandchildren, who have given me unbounded joy, pleasure, and nachas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephen, Sam, for those heartfelt words. You know, eulogies like that make me realize why eulogies are so important at a funeral. They are actually the eulogy has biblical roots. Biblical roots. So it's a commandment to be able to verbalize all what we feel about our loved ones, and it's very important because it helps us realize that not everything is gone. The body is gone, but all those beautiful memories stayed with you. So thank you so much. I'm going to continue now with a memorial prayer, El Male Rachamim. El Male Rachamim Shochem Bameroimim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashechina V'ma'alot Kedoshim Kedoshim Uteorim Kezoyer Raki Amazirim Ed Nishemat Ed Nishemat Menachem Ben Yitzchak Yosel V'Chana She'alach Le'olamo Ba'avur Shenu Mitpalelim V'ad Atzkarat Nishemato Gan Eden Vegan Eden Tei Menuchato Lachem Balarachamim Astireu Vesederkena Vavleulamim Utzeror Bitzror Achaim Achaim et Nishemato Adonai Unachalato Veyanuach Veshalom Al Mishkavo Venumar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Norman Baker, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. The Mourner's Kaddish. Itgadal ve'itgadash shemei Rabah. Ve'alma divirach hirutei ve'yamlich malchutei. Ve'chayechon u'v'yom echon u'chaye dechol Beit Israel. Bagala u'vizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehe shemei Rabah mivorach le'alam u'le'olmei olmaya. Yitvarach v'yishtavach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal. Shemei de Kudesha berichu. Le'eila min kol virchata v'shirata. Tushvechata v'nechemata. Damiram be'alma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehe shlam Rabah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Oseh shalom imrumav. U'yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Amakom inachem etchem betog shel avlet Zion v'Yerushalayim. May God bless you and comfort you. Let us all say, Amen. We have one more thing to do here at the cemetery, and it is to participate in the burial. In a few minutes, everybody here will have the opportunity, if you wish, to come forward, pick up a shovel, and to put a little bit of earth on top of Norman's coffin. According to the rabbis, this is an act of kindness, an act of chesed, and it's a beautiful way to pay tribute to the blessed memory of Norman Baker, Zichrono Livracha. Before we do that, I would like to extend on behalf of the family a big thank you to all the caregivers for their love and care that they provided to Norman. And the donations on Norman's memory could be made to the Norman and Judith Baker Fund at the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba, or of course, you can do it to your charity of preference. The meal of consolation immediately after burial is going to be at the Shasbury, the second floor, the library. For the Shiva, it's going to be observed on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 863 Campbell Street. That's the home of Pam Baker. I believe they can visit anytime during the day, but the service, the Mariv service, is going to be chanted at 7 p.m. Everybody's invited to come, participate, and pay your respects to the family. So, it's time now to proceed with the burial part of the service. So I would like to invite immediate family first to come forward to pick up a shovel and to put some earth on top of the coffin, and then everybody else is invited to do the same. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Thank you all of you on the internet for tuning in. Sorry? Tonight too? Oh, at the Shafri. So tonight, if you want to participate and recite Kaddish with the family, the davening is going to be at the Shasbury at 7 p.m. Thank you. Didn't have it in my notes. Okay.
just trample on those other graves. Yeah.